Resolution is really fundamental to understanding digital imaging. I know it's a lot of fun to start getting in and cutting and pasting and swapping heads and doing that kind of stuff in Photoshop. But before we do any of that, let's just take a moment and make sure we understand about pixels and how many pixels are made up an image and so on and so forth. So image resolution refers to how many pixels are in your image and then how many of them we choose to display per inch. It's kind of two separate things. You could have an image with 10 million pixels in it, and you can decide to display those 10 million at 72 pixels per inch or at 250 pixels per inch. And I'm going to talk about that in a second as to why you would decide 72 or 250. So first of all, it's just how many pixels are in this image. And that's going to depend on a couple of things, including the input. Did this image come from your DSLR? And if so, you probably, just based on the hardware of your DSLR, it can capture at a limited amount of pixels. It can't do a gazillion pixels per inch. It probably does capturing images that may be like 20 megapixels. So that means each image has 20 million pixels in it. And then again, we can decide how many of those to display per inch. Or maybe you're scanning in your image and you go to your scanner settings and it asks you what resolution. So it's asking you how many pixels per inch do you want to scan this in as? And that's going to be based on some hardware limitation as well. Certain scanners can only do certain kinds of resolution. You may be getting your images from the web, and those images are most likely all going to be at a resolution of 72 pixels per inch. All right, so the first thing is just understand when we're talking about resolution, we're talking about, first of all, how many pixels overall are in an image, and then we're talking about how many of them we are displaying per inch. And this is going to be related to the source of the image. But then in Photoshop, we're going to change that. So this guy over here wants to tell you that when we're thinking about changing our resolution, there are two numbers or two ranges that I want you to think about. Images that are going to be output for the web, so they're going to live on the web. So an image that you're going to put on discussion board, for example, or an image you're going to put on a website would have a resolution of 72. That means I may have 20 million pixels in my image. I may have 5 million pixels. I may have 30 million pixels. I can have all the pixels in the world that I want in my image, but I'm only going to display 72 of those per inch. And that's because computer monitors worldwide, the majority of computer monitors, maybe not your specific one, but worldwide, the majority of computer monitors display images at 72 pixels per inch. So if I display mine at 72 and the next person displays theirs at 72, or that's what their computer screen sees, then we know we're going to get a 1-to-1 ratio. So in other words, the way it looks on my screen is the way it's going to look on their screen. And so you will be making your images as JPEGs for discussion boards, so you need to know this. Web images need to have a resolution of 72 pixels per inch. Images that are going to go for print need to have a higher resolution. 250 to 300 pixels per inch is the general range of how many pixels you want to display per inch so that it looks sharp when you print it out. And why this number? It's also kind of like a hardware limitation. Like 72 pixels per inch for web is a hardware limitation based on computer monitors. 250 to 300 is a hardware limitation based on most inkjet printers. So they can't give you, when they're putting out their little dots, and it's all the little dots that make up the ink that's making your photograph, it's all just made up little dots of ink. If they can't put more than 300 per inch, they're just not physically capable of doing that. So 250 to 300 is the perfect amount of little dots per inch to make all of that ink blend together and to look like a photograph. If you send an image that is meant for the web with a resolution of 72 dots per inch to a printer, it'll print it out. But all of those dots are going to be bigger. And that's what we call a pixelated image. It looks kind of blurry. It doesn't look sharp. Think about it like you're making a mosaic with tiny little, I don't know, something smaller even than a dime. I'm thinking like you're making a mosaic with pinheads, something really small. Or you're making a mosaic with like large tiles. Which one is going to be able to give you more details and to look sharper? The one that you're making with the pinheads, the tiny little things. So it's the same thing with your images. If I take my image and I decide to display from my 20 million pixels that are in it, 250 of those per inch, it looks sharper. All right, so from this video, the main thing I want you to get is just what is image resolution? What's the image resolution for web? What's the image resolution for print? And then the next video, I'll talk about how do we change these things in Photoshop.